What's up, GBA type people? It's your favorite GBA PR co-host to hate, special guest, or the Flying Bird, bringing you week 12 of the GBA Power Rankings solo this week. I'm flying alone. I guess I'm the lonely flying bird. This week is a special week for most GBA coaches because it's the last week of hearing my annoying voice for this season as I pray to get some competent GBA Power Rankers for next season. On the final week of GBA APR, we will see me talk about several aspects of the coaches, including how do we rank the coaches each week, battles, performances, drafts, and standout moments. The two questions I have for you, because apparently question of the day is something that's important to any GBA power ranking video. Thanks, Turbo. So the first one is, with the recent announcement of the GBA D-League, which potentially will see one coach one day end up in the main league, who do you want to see? Personally, I think one of my fellow analysts, Aaron2420, deserves a very in-depth look for some top-quality Citra battles, zany commentary, but most importantly, how many people can they say they've beaten the GOAT, Aki VGC YouTube on his home turf on the NPL? I think it would surely be on one hand. And also, a massive shout out to Aaron today for recording this video because I'm incompetent. Now, in terms of draft, I recommend using the token minorities drafting with the Elite series, which breaks down Pokemon into roles rather than types and things like that, which they recommend selecting a strong defensive core, 2 strong priority options, I wonder why Jolt always gets Breloom, 2 stealth rockers, 2 hazard removers, preferably a defog and rapid spin option, 2 good speed tiers. Personally, I find a good speed tier to be over base 110, 1 good wall breaker, 1 ground immunity, 1 electric immunity, a complete fire water grass core, a complete Fairy Dragon Steel Core, or some people refer to that as a Fantasy Core, 1 Pursuit Trapper, and potentially the options of Toxic Spikes and Spikes. So, without further ado, let's get into my favourite coach at 16. There's only really one option. Every time a new challenger approaches the GBA, there is a huge amount of intrigue, and Coach Z was no different. Mysterious coach who threatened to take down the establishment of the GBA, but week 1, it became clear he would struggle to take down a single opposing Pokemon. A draft that boasted the likes of Manaphy, Celebi with a terrifying Sand Core of Hippowdon and Necro struggled to land big damage. His probably only noticeable takedown was throwing fellow analyst itzGregulator off his pick'em crew and forcing him to retirement. Ugh. Constantly yo-yoing between the bottom 3 places, I know one thing is for certain, he hasn't set the bar very hard for next season to eclipse if he decides to rejoin. In the final week, another disappointing performance would see the classic circular narrative as a flashback to week 1 in the face of a different threat going down 6-0. It's hard to really pinpoint where Coach Z's season went wrong, but I believe there's a few problems with the draft. Hippowdon and Excadrill as a sand core. I personally find it underwhelming with an incomplete fantasy core. The reliance and setup on Pokemon like Fearow, Manaphy, and Excadrill made it quite hard to effectively break. I also found the speed of the team to be quite lackluster, with only Sneasel being above base 110. And when it comes to the importance of draft is one of the 3 most important elements of draft, because there really is only 3. Draft, prep, and battling. And what you find with a lot of teams is a weekend draft means it's harder to prep, which means it's then hard to get results because opponents just have a better team, so they will see Team U 9 times out of 10 more likely. But in number 15, well, as I said last week, there's only 3 things certain in life. Death, taxes, and Aaron bringing the same 6 Pokemon every week. Good to see the items change this week though. He was another new challenger in this format, and when you only bring 8 out of 12 Pokemon, or why did you draft 12 Pokemon? Who will ever know? And there's really one question we're still trying to figure out. My good friend Macedon wants to know, who's the coach of the Melbourne Rotoms? And one day we'll figure out that simple bloody question. A draft centered around a terrifying rain core of Pelipper, Mega Swampert, Ludicolo, Kingdra with the likes of Mimikyu, Katana was always going to be hard to prep for week to week. However, the main letdown was Aaron struggling the first few weeks to bring Stealth Rocks and then realized, oh, I only have 1 Stealth Rock option, which was quite an oversight in his draft. Although the pure offense was phenomenal, it was constantly taken advantage of by various techs, from no ice resist by Lars to quick feet Jolteon by John. He will know the last hurrah against Jolt will see him leave on a respectable 2-0 loss. I think where Aaron can really improve is that draft aspect, in which I recommend checking out the drafting with the Elite, obviously, because I'm plugging it once, so might as well plug it again. His defensive core of Mimikyu, Kartana, Sliggoo is quite underwhelming and no fire type as well. The pieces of the draft were really lackluster. I think when you see the best drafts when it comes around weather focus is that there needs a second mode, and I think where Aaron struggled with his draft was there's no second mode. It was, okay, if rain works, I win. If rain doesn't work, I don't win. And it makes it really easy to prep for each week. And that was something that was really annoying to watch. But I do understand, because if people aren't aware, Aaron does go out and get paid to commentate VGC events, things like that. So he isn't quite time poor man. He was also doing internships and things like that. And I can understand that he got very busy. And then once you fix building around that rain core, as I mentioned earlier, there was definitely some other things he could have taken into account. I think that like something like Torn T round 1 would have been really nice to have a really nice flying type to take advantage of that rain. It's also fast, but then again, he did opt for Pelipper rain, which is good and gives you defog, U-turn, it's gold. But I think that sometimes with those rain cores, especially in a GBA tier draft, because you're only limited to a certain number of Pokemon in each tier, I personally find that something like Politoed is a better rain setter than Pelipper, only because it doesn't offer you defog or momentum, but at the same time it's a lot cheaper in the tiers and you can normally pick up something a lot higher. And that way you can get some more higher threat Pokemon, as we saw from Miguel's last season in GBA, where he just had some massive offense in his top tiers. But the bottom tiers just become sort of irrelevant with those sort of top-heavy drafts. But like any good VGC player, we all know cut is X2, not 2X. Number 14. Every season in GBA, we need a token anti-genning advocate, because genning is bringing down the Pokemon establishment faster than Coach Z can sack a Pokemon. Now, Necro Steve amused crowds this season with a mixture of some deep jazz and some official GBA endorsement by the official Pokemon trainer lady. The devastating sand core of Tyranitar Stoutland, Lycanroc Day, nearly caused some upsets over the likes of Molotui. However, I still think the time involved in breeding each Pokemon, which I definitely support, but like Ice Fang Tyranitar instead of Ice Punch was a hindrance. As you saw this week, John didn't live an Ice Punch, but you have to respect the Ice Fang. In addition, putting in some money fights throughout the season, and although sporting an X1 record, I thought that was not a true indication of how he played it throughout the season. There was definitely some really interesting moments in where you were hanging onto your seats, hoping that Necro was going to cause the upset in matches against like Chimp Act, for example, with if he was a little bit more ballsier with his Lucha, causing an upset over Tom, but then also nearly beating Mono. Like, it's something that it's a foundation for next season if he chooses to come back. The draft, I really liked having a really nice fantasy core, a really diverse amount of rockers, a good rapid spin option in Delmise and defog in Hawlucha, Togekiss, Rotom Heat, a good speed tier in Hawlucha, Lycanroc Sun and Malakazam. We could potentially see Necro come back next season with a slightly better draft. I think it was another draft that relied a little bit on its weather setter, but I do really like the combination of Tyranitar Stoutland because there are a lot less normal resists in draft, because unless your opponent drafts a Ghost or Steel Pokemon, Stoutland can punch a hole 9 times out of 10, and that's what I like to see, is when we look at those explosive options. If you are going to use weather, you need an explosive option to really take advantage of that. Aaron had his Mega Swampert, Necro had his Stoutland, and I think that next season we could see Necro do a lot better with a fairer record, but unfortunately he's in number 14. Okay, so number 13, effectively associated with the phrase, "We've got to gas up his good performances." It's Crimson Seabad of the Detroit Steelwings, endorsed by G Fuel and NPL Season 1 champion Keegan Games YouTube. I know he is a big Crimson City fan. That's what he keeps telling me. Crimson City. There's been some big moments for Crimson, from the low point of wishing he could compete with the top dogs after a tough loss to Jock, to absolutely dismantling Geo with future sight Jirachi. Each week we saw Crimson grow as a battler. I think that's a true testament of his character. Even though he's out of playoffs, he was still trying to constantly get better throughout the season. And that's what I really enjoy seeing, is when you see these coaches constantly get better and better each week. A very diverse draft with one of the best mons in format, led by Jirachi, but also the surprise package of Thundy Eye, which will always stand out as the best electric burb in my eyes. I think if Crimson comes back next season, the Steelwings could definitely push for playoffs. This week, he showed that early game he could match the likes of Envy with that Don fan. That really speedy Don fan. That was unfortunate that it got burnt, but he did sort of go down. Sacking the Mega Beedrill to Hooper was definitely a questionable play, because I do believe that Scarf Hooper can be outspent by Jollibee. I cannot be bothered to fact check it because it's been too long. Was all she wrote. As it was too late, as he couldn't defend the pure offense of the Crimson Chargers. On Crimson's draft, the rocking options in Jirachi, Don Fan, Inferno, in combination with Toxic Spikes, Mega B, Grigus, the Rapid Spin option. In the why is this Pokemon still relevant, but Bandit beats Gypsy, the Don Fan, and a defog Baby Gay Burb, being Vullaby. lack of fantasy core is something more common in the GBA, but an overall nice draft, and I really like the addition of Volleyball over Granville because, as I said earlier, it helped dismantle Geo. So in number 12, the number one coach I said I was backing from the beginning of the season, Tom Z, has been a roller coaster of emotions from starting the season with arguably the best draft by Verdenabe, some early upsets. I thought, right, this will be the year Tom does it. I believe in my good pal Tom Z. But the issue with Tom is he's such a confidence player. And I know that if he was a Pokemon, he'd be an Archeops. Because once he goes in under 50%, he flounders throughout the season. And his argument was being burnt out. And I know how much work he puts in behind the scenes, so I can definitely understand why he was burnt out. However, the most important thing is he got 2 free hot meals off Mono. So, you're slowly clawing your way back over Mono. He'll be thanking the Sizzle and Kamoa for that. Tom's draft was terrifying. However, I think Tom just hasn't found the complementary pieces to his style of play yet, and that's really letting him down. I know that certain coaches have certain ones which really just complement their playstyle, and when we talk about later in someone like Envy or John, you'll see why I mention this. But his draft focused on a good Volt turn core in Sizzle, Rotom Wash, Lando T, allowing to pivot into such big newts as Mega Houndoom, Lando T, the range of rockers in Lando T, Rhyperior, Kamoa, and Diancie. And what was really good about this was they were all rockers, but they all had very different weaknesses, so it does make it harder to prep for each week. And they all had a different 4 times weakness, which was quite interesting. In combination with the second best toxic spike user in the game, being Roserade. However, in my opinion, the trades and transactions made this team worse off because I like the wish offense and just a passive fat shit to support with a recovery option. Because when you look at Tom's team, he struggles to pivot from 1-1 to 1-1 without taking massive damage, because the issue you have with things like Sizzle and Rotom Wash is that 9 times out of 10 you don't really want to be running recovery on them, and Rotom Wash's recovery is normally limited to Pain Split. And when you look at that, every time you're coming in taking rocks, Rotom Wash is taking 12% or 6% after leftovers. It really struggles. Also, how Tom's prep was pretty stagnant, like for example, Defog Rotom Wash, Banded Sizzle, Lando T with Z-Move rocks was sort of a letdown. The number 11, the cutest couple in the GBA is Wolfy Glick, the man model, and his bag of bagels. A man who's probably hands down part-time model, and his beauty just gets me excited for Pokemon. Wolf had one request coming to the last few weeks, besides an infinite supply of bagels, Tom, get on that, was that he would hopefully make playoffs. Although he brought some of the coolest sets to the league each week, including Sunny Day Tangrowth to send Tom to the Shadow Realm, and Max Speed Jellicent, in which Gator's still, his Sandile is still not working properly. There was never a dull moment with Wolf, from walling Aster J, marked for a big upset, or just wondering how many bagels could he eat in a match. This week saw the man with the best hair take on a broken anime character with an unbeatable Florges, Flame Charge, and Xerxtry. Early on in the match, we see Florges just wall a Mega Camel. Imagine if it had HP Water. That would have been funny. The way that Wolf can slow down momentum in a match is really interesting. He shows really no fear. On the Bulu, for example, he just goes for Lewis because he knows he's got his sash intact. He plays it very slow, and I think that's quite an advantage of Wolf. In the WBE, we saw that it took him a little bit while to get going, but when he gets going, he gets going. His draft was another one that just selection at the right time, and what I mean by that is there was some ones I thought he took really early in the draft. His round 1 pick, for example, I believe it was Tangrowth, and I know he wants to have fun, and I definitely think he used some of the mons the most diverse I've ever seen. It's nearly as bad as Verd used to be with his diverse sets, but who knows. If he focuses a little bit more on draft, getting those right cognitive pieces, he could be a top-tier threat next season in the GBA. And considering he's only played 3 or 4 seasons of Draft League, I think this is only his 2nd season of singles, the man has a 75% title rate or record winning streak, which I think by any means is very good. I think this is his first time ever not making playoffs. And I think once he gets those pieces going, he's definitely going to be a top-tier threat. So we hope that next season Wolf is going to come back, and more so than not, can he bring us some more models for the pool play for March Madness? Can you model for us, Wolf, please? Thank you. Number 10. Now, my number 10 might be interesting to some people because it's Aster J. He's like the smart kid in the class who just trips over himself, where there should be things he would solve instantaneously. For example, what is your name? He does not know. As previously mentioned, a normal Scolopede could have taken down Wolf, and towards the end of the season, he put in a real West Brom Albion, or giant killing performance for you Yanks, knocking off previous number ones in the league being Jock, Gator, and Gator through his diverse preps. You could give me a year to prep for Aster J sets, and I still couldn't see what's coming. This week saw Aster J bring a Salic Berry Fortress to get off big chunk of damage with Explosion. To contrast his more traditional defensive prep at the start of the season, the offensive momentum was continued by U-turn Zapdos into Barbaracle. We all know how much ex-GBA D-League admin Reichman loved to see a Barbaracle sweep. Barbaracle breaking both Gator's Clef Key, Buzzle, and Mamoswine. It really showed how Turbo's criticism of 1 in 5 Aster prep is quite wrong, because when Aster's prep is on fire, he's on fire. His use of Mudsdale throughout the season has been impressive. The main critique I have for Aster is his execution. The reason I say that is because there's been too many games now where Aster builds up enough momentum where his opponent should not be allowed back in the match at all. There is no reason, no rhyme, no reason for him to be allowed back in the match. But his execution has been quite poor. He really goes on the defensive in that scout first, attack second, and it really hinders him this week. The Mudsdale set was absolutely perfect, magnifico, but I just wonder sometimes what happens when those prep aspects backfire. I hope we see the token Weeaboo back again next season, but don't call him Weeaboo, that's a cuss word, since they're anime characters who live down Weeaboo holes. My number 9. A team that makes playoffs being in the bottom half is quite an interesting proposition. However, when you're in one of those weird leagues where half the teams make playoffs, it makes a lot of sense in my eyes. Coming off a clean sweep by the Burb Fave Tom Z, Mono has truly had a Mono season. He's a bit like a yo-yo in the regular season, but always saves his best performances for last. I think where Mono has sort of struggled this season is there's been some games, for example, like against Necro Stevo, where it was only a 2-0 in both scenarios. We were really hoping for some bigger wins, and that's where the Tampa Bay fans are a little bit worried. As coming into playoffs, Mono hasn't had hit form as of yet. I think we haven't seen the best of Mono, and it's typical Mono for fashion. He sort of dwindles out in the last 3 weeks of the season, but then, whoa, he just brings like triple priority Greninja, things like that. And his draft was quite impressive. I think that the way he's used Slowking throughout the season, from using it as a Z mover, has been quite well. The default Comfy. Snorlax, Mono has proved time and time again he is one of the best users of Rizzy's mum, as he likes to call it. The hot redhead as well comes through very clutch. Z Rotom C was another really nice bring against Necro a couple of weeks ago. The use of Brett Protect Registeel. He's using the pieces of his team very nicely. So once you see a coach who understands the inner workings of his team, it makes it 10 times harder to prep for, because he probably knows his ins and outs of his team better than you know yours. And I think coming into playoffs, Mono has a really interesting team. He has, the fantasy core of Megazard X, Comfy, Registeel, the Firewater Grass core and Mega Charizard X, Keldeo, Rotom C, a lot of nice pivot options, Defog in Rotom C and Comfy. The speed is a little slow, but then again, he does have 2 fast boys over base 100, being the Keldeo and Weavile. Some really nice fat passive options being Gliscor and Registeel. However, I do think the only disadvantage of this team is that it doesn't have a Wish Passer. When it comes to playoffs, Mono is traditionally a little bit more slept on because it doesn't have that, Heater for Heater, Lord, Hype Up Nation, Discord Hype Squad, whatever it is. But he always is a potent threat when you get to those games. And that's what you need to watch out for. But I definitely think Monotui could give the old GBA playoffs game a bit of a shake. My number 8. This week, the San Francisco Giants, coached by the hottest coach in draft format, Leader Geo, with an easier match leading into playoffs, playing the mysterious Coach Z. The initial first-turn play of ensuring the safety of getting up the safe toxic spikes and then scouting for any wheezing shenanigans was quite interesting. However, I thought it was better to get up a second layer of T-spikes, because you would have seen, for example, the Porygon 2, the Last Resort, whatever Coach Z was thinking, could have potentially walled him. But the way in which Geo slows down the momentum game by using things like Toxapex, Mew, Ditto to scarf off his opponent's nuke buttons has been really nice. There's never a real moment where someone looks at G and goes, right, I'm just going to set up my win con now. Oh, there's still a Ditto. I've got to beat the Haze Toxapex. I've got to watch out for the Super Fang Toxic Raw Mew. And especially in a make or break game, just double check your Pokemon. We constantly say it here in the GBA. Double check your Pokemon. Max attack Mew could come back to bite you. Geo has probably been in touch with the RNG gods as of late. Claw proccing and now winning 4 speed ties in a row. The 6-0 definitely was nice to see, and it was definitely appreciated that he wasn't reverse 6-0'd by Cursed P2 with Last Resort. When it came to his draft, the fantasy core was the Mega Scizor, Rabombi, Haxorus. Now, Rabombi is definitely interesting, but when you consider he traded it for Slurpuff, you definitely understand why. It's a faster web option. It doesn't mesh as well as Mega Scizor. I personally feel that trade made his team a little bit worse. It does give him one Fist Boy, but I think that Slurpuff with webs is better, and when you consider how Chimp's been using Slurpuff, it's definitely improved his team, especially when you're trying to get an advantage over your opponents each week. That's something to take into consideration. He has defog options in Mew, Mega Scizor, Rotom Fan, Archeops. He has Rocks options in Mew, Dugtrio, Archeops, and then when he has the most broken one in VGC 18 being Blacephalon, as my good friend Amity likes to remind me, there's definitely just infinite possibilities of how it can win. Another draft that's a little bit slow, but then again you have his 107 in Blacephalon, so I can definitely appreciate the fastness of the team to an extent. The Rabombi and Dugtrio are the two both for 110. And I personally think that Geo has been the dark horse. Where has Turbo been? Maybe Geo's kidnapped him? I don't know. This week, the Bronx Police Department have not been returning my calls about a wild clam killing a big snake. My number 7, you would have guessed it, Joey Pokegame MD. A few weeks ago, he committed a crime in daylight robbery against Crimson Seabad. This week, karma has caught up with him being the victim of a daylight robbery. However, the Bronx have informed me they have sent their best detective on the case, Turbo Blaze IV, with all his Patreon money, will be going to solving the mystery of this case. The evolution of Joey this season has been quite amusing, from Spike's lead and DD spam to more of a balanced approach with Licky Licky, Wish passing to more offensive threats such as Necrozma, Zygarde 50 and Mega Gyarados. Again, only 2 Rocks options, but 2 very diverse Rocks options being Necrozma, which some people like Zaza believe if you can't hit it super effectively, it should be banned. And Rhydon, aim for the horn. The Fire Water Grass Course allows a Whisper and Mega Gyarados on paper is a little bit questionable. But when you consider the notoriety of Mega Gyarados in the GBA fans, it's a favorite amongst some of the old school boys. It's still relevant to this day, and it shows how even though the seasons keep getting longer and longer, and those old seasons seems to dwindle away, some of those people are going to come back with a bang. Salazzle, Whimsicott really have 2 really nice niche roles. Whimsicott, I think, even one week was Prankster Sunny Day just to stop my good friend Cybertron. The fantasy core he had was Zygarde 50, Whimsicott, and Magnezone, which was a very nice sort of acquisition. I do think Zygarde 50, as my boy Sleeves likes to remind me, is the best Dragon in format. It is incredible. The options it has with this DD. I do think that one of the mistakes was not making it Z Zygarde 50 just because of the way this breaks things, as my boy Sleeves likes to remind me constantly of. The Necrozma was definitely an interesting Z selection. However, I do think with all the trades and transactions that Pokegame made, he definitely improved his team. The Togedemaru drop for Licky Licky, the Necrozma, the Magnezone for Stack Attacker was definitely another interesting one, Linoon for Miltank, and that's what we like to see. We like to see these teams improve throughout the season. At the start of the season, he looked like another one of those blunder victims. He wasn't doing the best, but throughout the middle of the season, he found some random people off the side of the street that knew something about Pokemon that some people like mentioning. However, I do think that you can't take away a season's coach, because regardless of how good a front office is, at the end of the day, when you start that battle, it's only between you and your opponent. It'll be definitely cool to see Pokegame back next season. Hopefully it makes the playoffs, but until next time, best of luck in P4G, kid. Number 6 this week. I know, the Gator fans, but he put Gator so low, criminally underrated at 6. Oh look, blame Turbo. He's meant to be to balance it down and be the yang to the yin and put him at like 3 and keep you guys happy. But alas, poor Yorick. I think Gator, the last few weeks, has not been typical Gator self. Yeah, he's on a 2-game losing streak at the moment, so I couldn't really justify him being much higher. As I've said time and time again, Team in Form is a team I want to back. If you're on a 20-game winning streak in the league, I just want to back you. I know that some are going to say, well, he's only second in his conference. He only went 8-4, and you put him at 6. That's criminally underrating him. I think last week against Wolf, the way in which he was stalled out, because, as I said last week, the oversight of his own turn timer by taking so long to calculate his moves. I understand this week that playoffs is already locked, and as some of my coaches say, once playoffs are locked, just worry about playoffs. Who cares about the rest of the games? And I sort of agree with, sort of disagree, but I think when you're in the big leagues like the GBA, I think every week is important. Just for that clout value, as some of my boys like to remind me of. He has played very well throughout the season, Gator. There's been some weeks where you go, gosh, well, he's in form. He's worth 100 million. He's won seven in a row or something like that. And that's what you like to see. Week 1, the 6-0 against the Detroit Steelings, and the fans are going to be crying, where's the justice? But, a 2-game losing streak, a loss to Chimp, I think, happened, because that's what the doc's telling me, and a loss to the New Orleans Pelicans early on in the season. I think that the draft of Gator was definitely a very Gator-esque draft. Heat ran round 1, interesting. But also the likes of Rocks on Mammothswine, Milk Tank, Spikes Klefki, some fast boys in Crobat, Leavani for Webs, and definitely Azumarill, Heatran, and Mega Rotario as the fantasy core, or Heatran, Mega Rotario. I think Azumarill is one of the most underrated and slept on Pokemon in format, especially when you consider its Belly Drum or Banded set just absolutely tears someone a new one. And that's what I really like seeing in Pokemon when we look at the early aforementioned drafting with the Elite Series. One good wall breaker is needed, and I think Azumarill is a really good wall breaker. The confidence of coaches is very important, I find, especially leading into playoffs, because each week is its own battle, and I'm worried that when it comes into playoffs, will Gator be able to live up to the hype around his own name? Who knows? Turbo's been gassing him up for the last 3 or 4 weeks now, and so we'll have to see. Number 5, this is the most forgettable coach. I can't remember his name. I think it's Alpha Ranger is the coach of the New Orleans Pelicans. Well, it won't matter. No one will notice that I've forgotten who he is. Number 5. If there's ever a time to buy a lottery ticket, buy it last week, Pokemon. That would be the time. Very lucky against Necro Stevo. How much the luck actually mattered, who knows? Who knows? Leave a Theoremon down below. But I think John has definitely been a surprise package this season. He's going into the playoffs as someone who could be forgettable, but I think is quite memorable, in contrary to what Turbo's been saying about him. John this season has really drafted a John-like team and has used it really well. Mega Diancie and Garchomp have been the 2 main offensive threats on his team, and I also like how he's used the advantage of not having to Mega Evolve turn 1 with the Diancie. I think it was against Chimp where it just paid off. He did get very lucky with Sleep Talk rolls, but I think you need a bit of luck in Pokemon, because what's Pokemon without a bit of luck? The Fairy Dragon Steel Core of Mega Diancie, Garchomp, Escavalier. I think Tauntia was also a really nice pickup. A fast Pivotmon. Also, how good Incineroar has become because of Intimidate. I definitely think that'll be an interesting one for the rule books at home. Should it be legal? Should it not? I know that my good friend Tom said it doesn't make much of a difference. He drafted the Pokemon, he deserves to use it, and I agree. Also, the use of Tentacruel throughout the season as a defensive Pokemon. It is a defensive Pokemon, not like that time against Aster he brought Swords Dance. There's definitely been something very interesting to see. This week, the way in which John positions the game to allow his Carmine Cresselia to sweep is definitely what I like to see. As I said before, John has put together a few little win streaks here and there, most notably a couple weeks ago when he was on about 5. And let's just say, he's a bit like Liverpool. I've never seen this many Pelipper fans in Season 2. Where are they all coming from? Maybe they've just been lost in Mystery Dungeon. I'll never know. The way in which he's used Jolteon again, besides the Season 1 MVP, this has probably been one of Jolteon's better seasons. Also the Tesserina, which is broken. You know, another nice Rapid Spin option. Defog on Taunt-T. As well, Rapid Spin Cruel. And the use of John W's favourite lower tier Pokemon being Piloswine, or Olaf as he likes to affectionately known it as, has been really impressive the way in which he's constantly kept up pressure with his rockers. And when I like to look at my rocking options, I like to look at how do they beat Defoggers. Piloswine's done that really well, so has Garchomp, especially Chapman on that big Z Crystal. So, now that Pokemon's out of the way, on to number 4. Dun dun dun. This week, the Dark Horse, Lars, took on Joey Pokey MMD. And let's just say the first 5-10 minutes of that was quite boring to watch. It's definitely not a game for neutrals. The trick play of Necrozma on the Necrozma crippled Joey's rock option meant that Kieran Black could start pivoting around quite easily, and then it dropped to Salazzle. So the way in which this game really went was every possible position that Joey got himself into in, Lars seemed to crit or hacks him with a little bit of RNG. Now, I know some people say, oh, but Bird, he could have done that naturally. Yeah, he definitely could have. I definitely believe Lars could have upset Pokemon this week. But when you look at how the game went, I think the crit on the Zygarde 50 just really sealed his fate. The thing that I really didn't like about this week was it seemed that every time Salazzle came in, Lars just had to start sacking Pokemon. And I think when you get to these playoff games, you can't be doing that. It's a real issue, and I think the reason why he's out of my top 3 is that people in the top 3 seem to identify their win cons like turn 1, recognize it turn 73, and still somehow win turn 155. The recognition of mid-game going, oh, Magician didn't activate this whole time on Licky Licky. It is actually a Z Crystal, which was a good prep by Joey, but sometimes that little bit of oversight from Lars could come back to haunt him. I think that's where I've said earlier on in the season, where knowing your mechanics is super important. I personally don't know how I personally don't know what a ground immunity is, but I'll learn eventually. And that's where I think Lars is going to struggle if that situation arises again. He doesn't have to play Pokemon again, but it will just be tougher and tougher in the next few weeks. His use of a core popularized by 6-foot hacks in the D-League, being Tapu Fini and Kieran Black, has been quite good to see. Also the way in which he's used Lurantis throughout the season and Mega Manectric. The Fairy Dragon Steel core of Kieran Black, Tapu Fini, Cobalion, with the Fire Water Grass core of Delphox, Tapu Fini, and Lurantis has been quite interesting. The way in which he's used Mega Manectric as a pivot has been quite good to see. He has quite a fast draft with Mega Manectric, Tornado's Eye, Delphox being 108, Gengar being 110, and I think Lars definitely has the opportunity to upset a few cookies this season. He's made a few big upsets the last 2 weeks, being both on Jolt and Pokegame, and against Envy, he really gave him a run for his money. The issue I've got though is when you look at previous performances, he's 1-1 against most of the big dogs. He hasn't beat Envy and he has not beat Chimp. He beat AIM though, which I think is definitely important. As I said before, a bit of a crit first, but it is what it is. And now it's time to go on to the coveted top 3. What do they put in that corn in Iowa? Time and time again I have asked for the anti-doping agencies to investigate, but the results are inconclusive. It is believed that in ancient America, the potato Watami people would ride Brelooms into battle to protect their corn crops from the invading troops. Jolt seems to have continued this ancient tradition. However, there's only been one thing keeping it down, which has plagued his people for a long-ass time. They can't beat the invading troops twice. Gasp! One of the few dudes this season whose unique prep has been rewarded with multiple top plays, including Nature Power Mega Venusaur, Fizdef Breloom, and getting 3 bullet seat hits. Apparently he's now top play. His use of lower tier threats like Gardevoir and Aerodactyl paired with traditional threats of Celesteela Hydreigon has definitely made Jolt one of the harder teams to prep for. The way in which he's used Styx this season has really shown who the real brain is behind this season. Styx himself masterminding another good season for Jolt. Or is it for him? TTN drama is still inconclusive. This week against Abachang, he proved how diverse his prep was. Even against one of the most offensive drafts in the league, he used Assault Vest Dragon to U-turn out on the Ludicolo. The way in which Jolt's prep comes through, especially by things like Trace Gardevoir, Mega Venusaur, various Hydreigon sets, are making the most of Celesteela's moveset. We've seen something like Z Metal Sound Celesteela, Giga Drain Celesteela, and those things have been quite good. Jolt's ability to see 5 years into the future by getting a degree in advanced corn growing has allowed him to see the preservation of the right wing corners and also luring Cybertron into a false sense of security. My boy Stab is still out there. He's been out there. He's on hunger strike until Jolt wins the title. And you know what? The Tokyo minorities, they've won one before. I think they can win a second. My boy Stab, he just wants to eat. So I think when you have the endorsement of a 2-time Stab League champion, it definitely makes it a lot harder for your opponents to win. There's a lot of people behind Jolt. The front office league, as I like to call it, there's more people in the front office than there is in the league. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how he goes this week. I think that the expectation for Jolt here is to win it. Any one of these top threes are very likely to win it. If not, I was wrong, and I can't apologise because I was wrong. So, my number 2, Dom Malona, every week has reminded us and uneducated folk that Chimp is a real dude to be taking notes from. Turbo, take notes on how to upload on time from my pal Chimp and turn up for recordings. This season has seen the god anime Doki Doke Chimp go 9 wins and Tilt Pack Chimp go 3 losses. He has topped the Ultra Moon Conference, ending the season on a 3-game winning streak, unlike my good pal Jolt, and that's where the big difference is between 2nd and 3rd. He's brought some of the sets to the highest caliber, even Rick and Morty fans can't understand. By Nilahiglu to trap a Registeel, a Waterium Z Greninja to beat Lead Mamo, and Scarf Nilahiglu, which rumour has it that Aster J still hasn't found a switch in for. Also, Nilahiglu did get top kill leader with 21 kills. It's not hard when Aster sacks 10 Pokemon to it. The end of the season was always a calculated approach from the Doki Doke Super Anime Goku Lord Chimp. And when you come to the one last hurrah of the Seesaws, everyone in the GBA fan server seems to be glory hunting to want to be that Philadelphia Sizzles role, or maybe Chimp's just giving it to people. Find out next time on Poke Drama Alert. The way in which Chimp establishes early on that he is committed to Cardinal Sin in U-turn Greninja has been quite upsetting to some of our power ranking friends, especially myself. He always makes the aggressive play, which I think may come back to cost him. And the way in which he's used Slurpuff, as I mentioned earlier, he swapped for Bombi for Slurpuff, and I think proved his team the way he's used Slurpuff this season, using the seed mechanics. Also this week we saw Sticky Web and Heal Bell to really heal up everything was quite nice. The wheeling down of Wolf's team with all those hazards was really nice to see, and he really doesn't let his opponent ever get really off a free defog unless it's on the Mega Camel. The only note I have to end on is it's great to see that the most broken modern format, the Greninja, picked up the final kills of the Seesaws. It's going to be a shame to see Chimp go. He's definitely added a high level of competition and probably some of the longest battles to watch to the GBA. And that's alright, because each coach has their flaws, and you know what? My number 1, his only real flaw was he had an easy schedule. Was it the man with the plan, or was it the man with an easy schedule? The verdict is still out on that, but rumour has it certain people are still fighting about it in the comment section. And as my pals in the HQ would say, that quick claw would have saved you from getting embarrassed. Envy's come a long way from the criminally underrated GBA D+ draft days, but some things never change, like fighting with Stab in the comment section, handing him L's seasons, and they're not even in the same league anymore. The only time Envy has been outside top 3 of power rankings was week 1 of the post-draft power rankings. Ever since then, he's been a top 3. It's a crime in itself when you consider how broken his offense was with Tapu Koko, Hoop Prime Ban. Who allowed Hoop Prime Ban? That should be banned. Mega Pincers supported by a solid defog option in Empoleon. Yeah, I'm so happy I never have to use that joke ever again. The only way you can stop the man who discovered fire is with a rigged Leaf Storm crit or blunder thinking he can pull out the W. This week, Crimson Seabad really lost the game with the over-prediction of going into the Beedrill on the Hooper Unbound. Also, the way in which that Envy knows his mechanics like the back of his hand. Going for the Hyperspace Fury as the Thunderous Incarnate sets up a sub is a really nice play as it gives him a lot of offensive momentum. The last 3 drafts, I haven't really talked about their drafts because I think people know what they do, but I'm going to talk about Envy's a little bit just because I think it's important because he's skyrocketed from 12th to 1st. I think it's mainly because being due to his transactions. The Mungus for Hippowdon and the Raichu Lola for the Stoutland is definitely an interesting sort of drop, but I can see why. The Sandcore was probably not helping him, and now Amoongus gives him a really nice defensive pivot and allows your opposing Gardevoir to get a free regenerator. Alolan Raichu as well has been crazy in Electric Terrain, picking up so many clutch kills, and the way in which he just gives him another unique speed option has been quite good. Silvally as well, traded for Incineroar, is definitely another nice thing, giving him so many diverse types. He doesn't really fulfill many. He fulfills a nice Fairy Dragon Steel Core and Coco, Empoleon, and Kyurem. And what I also like about Envy's team is, although it's quite offensive, he does have the option for a few defensive Pokemon. Mainly he's been using the Kyurem, also the Gligar, the baby Chimp as he likes to call it, and the Amoongus. Silvally as well has been nice, but that filthy Regenerated Core and Slowbro Amoongus really stopped a lot of teams, and the way in which he controls the momentum in the match is phenomenal. And I think the only way he gets outsped is by Chimp's use of Unburden users. And when you consider that it's going to be a very hard season for MB to lose, but then again, he is human. We have seen him take a few L's in rematches. A mixture of both luck and utter dominance of his draft has led to an impressive 9-3 record. And it's another 5 season for the 85% GBA average with D+ drafts. Alright, so this is the last week of GBA Power Rankings for this season. Oh no, don't stop crying. I know you're crying. Get a box of tissues or something like that. It's finally finished up after 3 months of enjoying watching both live com, post coms, and weekly recaps on those weeks that we've been quite time for. So massive shout out to the weekly recap boys, because sometimes I have to sleep just what you've said. Not this week though, I promise. We've had to say goodbye to some of the PR crew getting taken down by Coach Z for ranking him too lowly in the likes of Verd, Abe, and now Turbo. However, I've just got one question. A lot of the crew has been under fire this season for not being competent analysts. So we want to know, who do you want next season in the GBA Power Rankings? Don't forget to like, comment, and join the GBA fan server. Until next time, peace.